All right. Hello, FOSS Meetup Bangalore. Woo! Okay. Okay. So I think not like I'm not really happy with the shout. And there is one thumb rule here that we cannot start the meetup unless and until there is energy, enough energy in the crowd. So let's do it one more time. How is the energy at FOSS Meetup Bangalore? Woo! That's what I wanted to hear. All right. So we recently completed 1 year in the last meetup, and now the next year has started. So what? There is something special about today's meetup. Any guesses? What is the special thing about today's meetup? Okay. All right. Yeah, it's a themed meetup. This is the first themed meetup we are having, and we actually were getting a lot of requests to do a theme specific meetup, and it was in the pipeline for a long time, but finally we are doing it today, and it's all about front end today. And before we actually start the agenda, we have an amazing lineup of talks and an interesting panel discussion. So I'm really looking forward to it. Before we actually go into the agenda, I have some updates on behalf of FOSS United. So, FOSS United is basically a non-profit foundation to strengthen and promote the FOSS ecosystem in India, to build a strong FOSS community in India, and we have a lot of events which we do. The monthly FOSS meetups, Bangalore is one of the monthly FOSS meetup which is happening, and it's also happening in different cities like Chennai, Hyderabad, and more. Um, we also have the annual FOSS conference, India FOSS, which is happening, I think, in October 28th in Bangalore itself. City FOSS conference is something new which has come up. So a lot of different cities are actually organizing these FOSS conferences. And yeah, you can actually check out everything in the FOSS United platform. FOSS Hack is an annual hackathon which happens. It's basically a collaboration between students and the professionals to build something innovative. And yeah, you can find all of it in fossunited.org/events. Next, I would like to talk about the grants program. So if you are building something FOSS and you are looking for some financial support, you should check out this grants option. Next is Mon School. So it's basically an online learning platform, and it's basically a FOSS project. And if you want to help with teaching or creating courses, there's also a grant up to 1 lakh rupees for that. And public policy is actually something which not all of us in this room are aware of. So if you want to learn about more about public policies, FOSS United in collaboration with Takshashila actually gives a scholarship to learn more about this public policies. You can actually check out this thread for more information. Uh, I think Rahul is not here. He actually has done this course, so probably will reach out. You can reach out to him if you want more information on the same. And next, this is the job portal, which actually was introduced recently. You can actually check the job postings there, and even you can even post the openings if you want to hire someone. So yeah, it's basically a FOSS platform for job. And next, to have everything at one place, newsletter is the one thing which you can subscribe to. So you can check out and subscribe to this newsletter to get everything at one place. So yeah, and these are basically the industry partners, the behind FOSS United. And yeah, if you want to become, like, if your company wants to become a partner, you can actually reach out at fossunited.org/partners. And that's all about FOSS United. To know more, you can actually check the website. Everything I told and a lot of more things are there in the website itself. So yeah, do check it out. Now, coming back to the BLR meetup, the Bangalore meetup, we actually have started recording our meetups. So you will find it, like, for the last two meetups since we are recording. So you can check out the recordings on our YouTube channel. And we actually just joined Telegram, I think, a few weeks back. And any guesses how many members we have in Telegram right now? Whoa, how are you so accurate? Okay, so nice. So yeah, we have 200 plus members, and it's basically a Bangalore specific Telegram group so that you can be more focused on Bangalore specific events. And yeah, don't forget to follow us on Twitter for more updates. And yeah, kudos to the entire team. This is basically the entire team behind the FOSS United Bangalore meetups. So yeah, huge shout out to all of them. And Lastly, there is a call for volunteers. So yeah, if you want to help with design, video editing, review, and even handling socials, because we are slowly expanding our socials as well, do reach any of us out here. And yeah, that's all from my side. I would now hand over it to Vaishnavi to actually start the session. And yeah, thank you so much.
Hello, all. Thank you, Akansha, for that truly energetic opening note. That's exactly what we needed on a Saturday afternoon, after lunch and all. So, I am Vaishnavi, and I'm going to be a host for the day. Before we start, a huge shout out to Geeky Ants for providing us this wonderful space to host our July meetup. So, please, everyone, a huge round of applause for them. So, like it was mentioned before, this is our first themed meetup on Beyond Boundaries and Front End Force for Innovation. So, we're super excited about all the talks that we have in line. And without any further ado, let's get started. So, for our first speaker, we have Vaibhav Shinde, an engineer from DITE. And in this talk, he's going to be talking all about how to build cross framework UI kits with web components and open source. So, please come on stage and everyone, clap your hands.
Today's talk is going to be about building a cross-framework UI kit with web components. So before we get going, I'd like to introduce myself. I am Vaibhav Shinde. I'm a front-end developer at DITE. So DITE essentially provides SDKs with which you can implement real-time audio-video solutions into your own applications. So you can implement things such as group calls, webinars, live streams, and also chat. So this talk is essentially an accumulation of all of the learnings which we got and also defines the structure of our UI kit packages as well. So let's get to the basics. What is a UI kit? It is a collection of predefined user interfaces, interface components, with each component meant to serve a specific purpose. So what makes a good UI kit? It, it should be flexible and it should adapt to your brand theme, and it should be internationalization ready, and it should make handling icons easy as well. Another thing which we emphasize upon is making sure the developer experience is pretty good. And if the developer experience is pretty good, it also allows your users to ship faster. So next slide. So to expand upon the developer experience, your UI kit should have a minimal impact on the user's bundle size. You want to ship as minimal JavaScript as you can. It should have minimal extra dependencies, and it should have maximum browser support as well. And it shouldn't conflict with the user's CSS as well, because when they want to use your components, your component shouldn't break their CSS, and their CSS shouldn't break your components. And also, when they install your UI kit, your UI kit dependencies shouldn't break the dependencies as well. So, introducing web components. Web components essentially check all of these marks essentially because they allow you to create custom elements without a third-party framework. So it essentially eliminates the need for like 30, 40 kilobytes of JavaScript, which you need for a framework like React. Another thing is this makes them performant and size efficient as they are just essentially standard web APIs. And they also have pretty good browser support because they've been around in the browsers for, I think, 7 or 8 years. And you can easily encapsulate your CSS styles inside your components with the help of Shadow DOM. And web components also have lifecycle callbacks similar to frameworks like React. So here's a simple counter example which we have. Um, you can simply just enter in the my counter tag in your HTML and it will render the entire UI for you. So we'll take a look at the code which is used to render this component in the coming slides. So talking about Shardom, our next speaker is going to talk in depth about Shardom entirely. Like his entire talk is going to be about it. So I'll just briefly explain what it is. Shardom provides style encapsulation from the root documentary. So your CSS inside your components is scoped. So essentially, any CSS inside your root documentary shouldn't affect the uh, components. But there is a special feature of web components. It is that it can inherit CSS variables, and it can also inherit some handful CSS properties such as font family and line height. Also, Shadow DOM can not only be applied on custom elements like web components, but can also be also applied to article tag, aside tag, div tag, and more. So here is our Dite simple grid component, which is rendered in the DOM. This is what you see in your dev tools, essentially. So you can see the Dite participant tile component is rendered inside the shadow root of a Dite simple grid. So any CSS inside that shadow root, which affects only the Dite participant tile and not any other component. So here is a simple structure of the shadow DOM. As you can see, we have the documentary on the left side over there, and uh, so the element you want to attach a shadow root over to, that is called the shadow host, essentially. So if you want to attach a shadow DOM onto a div element, that becomes the shadow host, and the shadow root becomes attached in that host. And if you want to add elements to that shadow root, uh, you can add that, and any CSS inside that shadow root becomes isolated in that inside that shadow boundary itself. A fun fact about shadow DOMs is that HTML elements such as video tag, audio tags, typically use shadow DOM to isolate the styles. So if you have seen video tags and audio tags have their own custom UIs, which come with browsers like Chrome, Firefox, etc. So there are some caveats to using web components and shadow DOM. So you need to update the DOM elements manually each time when your state updates or anything. Also, styling nested components with Shadow DOM can be tricky because you cannot directly access the you cannot directly apply styles over to the nested components. Also, you need a lot of boilerplate code to get it to work with React frameworks such as React because it doesn't fully support web components yet. And so the things that React doesn't support yet is passing objects as props to components and also handling events which are inside components. So it cannot pick up that just yet. So for that, you need to write extra code like using a ref, attaching that ref onto that element, and then passing your props or handling events. So more on the framework support. Almost all of the modern frameworks provide good support for web components, apart from React. But support for web components is there in the experimental release. We hope it will be released in a stable version soon, so we won't have to do that extra boilerplate code. So this is the counter example which you saw earlier. If you take a closer look, you will see that the code is pretty similar to React's class component, except there is no templating like JSX or lit, and it doesn't provide proper state handling. So there are some lightweight libraries that help you with this. There is lit, which is by Google. There is Stencil.js, which is made by the Ionic team. And there is Fast, which is made by Microsoft. So let's take a look at Stencil.js because that's what we used for our UI kit. Stencil is a compiler that generates web components. So if you are familiar with Svelte, of how it is a compiler that generates those Svelte components, it is not a framework like React. So similarly, Stencil does that for web components. Also, it combines the best concepts of most popular web frameworks and into a simple build time tool because it provides HMR, like documentation and all of that. Stencil also provides convenient APIs which make writing web components easier as well. And it uses a lightweight virtual DOM implementation called SnapDOM. So why did we choose Stencil.js? Our team at Dite is pretty familiar with JSX and React, so with Stencil, all you need to do is write JSX, and the code is pretty similar to class components. So that makes the developer experience smoother. It is small and performant because it uses native APIs, and it has great developer experience out of the box. Like HMR, the project structuring is good. Unit testing and E2E testing is also there, and it provides good tools and plugin support, which I talked about earlier. Like it has a first-party global store library, a PostCSS plugin, and documentation. So here are some components written with Stencil. On the left side, you'll see the counter example, which we saw earlier. It's as easy as just mutating the state value and providing the rendering the UI in JSX. So all of that rendering is taken care of by Stencil. You don't have to manually update that, update those text nodes there. Similarly, you can also accept props as well in your Stencil components. And similar to React's class components, it also provides other lifecycle callback events such as component did render, component will render, disconnect callback, and all of those. So next thing about making UI kit is implementing a design system. It is essentially a set of guidelines that you can use to create efficient user interfaces. So it consists of design tokens for each kind of property you want to tweak, like typography, spacing, colors, and borders. So this is how our design system looks like. In our UI kit, we have typography, color, spacing. We also have border widths and radius, which is not shown over here. So if you were to use these components inside your own components, you would use that with CSS variables. So if you were to write that, this is how your code would look like. You'd have to manually write those CSS variables, and you need to provide your own default values inside those CSS variables. So for one or two components, this looks maintainable, but after some time, when the number of components increase in your UI kit, it becomes a lot harder to maintain. Like if you want to change the default colors, suppose you want to change the default background color, you have to go in and change background colors for each and every component. So there is a way out for this. You can use Tailwind CSS for your design system. So as I mentioned earlier, Stencil supports PostCSS via a plugin. So you can just install it and configure Tailwind CSS as you normally would in any other project. So yeah, and you also don't have to worry about vendor prefixes, as you can also configure auto prefixer in this. So before you would write your CSS like this with CSS variables and all of that, with Tailwind you can use Tailwind's applied directive and the theme utility and tweak it from a central source. So your CSS becomes a lot maintainable with this. Also, you can make it more easier for users to be able to tweak the design tokens. So what we do at Dite is we provide a provide Dite design system utility, which accepts element and the design tokens that you want to tweak. So it processes those design tokens and applies it onto that element. So this is the final output that you see on the right side over here. This is the default meeting UI which you get with Dite. So the next part is handling icons. In a UI kit, essentially you want icons to be customizable. So SVGs are a great choice for icons in a UI kit because it can inherit the fill and stroke colors. They can be animated and they can be scaled to any size. And here is how we implement like an icon component in our UI kit. We basically take in an SVG string and we just render that like we just do an inner HTML and render the entire icon so that it scales with the Dite icon component. So you can resize it and the icon will scale accordingly. Also, an icon pack can be as simple as JSON of SVG strings. This is our default icon pack, which you see over here. And these so the components you write can accept an icon pack via props or some other method like store or something. So this is our Dite clock component, which accepts an icon pack. So this internally uses the Dite icon component, and it uses that clock icon which is there in the default icon pack, and it just renders it inside it. So at Dite, we have an icon pack editor as well at icons.dite.io, wherein users can go over there. And if they want to tweak the icons, they can just simply paste in their SVG, process it a bit, and then they can download the UI, the icon pack, and use it along with our UI components. This makes the developer experience a bit more smoother. So next up is internationalization. It is a process of enabling your software to accept any locale. So users can tweak the strings in the components. They can make it work like multilingual. It can support multiple languages as well. And this is a simple implementation of internationalization, wherein you have an object with all of those strings. you write a helper function which returns the handles the strings for you. And our UI kit exports a use language utility which comes with type definitions, so you can easily create your own like locale objects here. So here we have creating a Hindi locale object. So this is an example in our UI kit component, which is a diet camera toggle. So it essentially we are passing a Hindi locale object to it, and this is the final out UI that is rendered. So coming to the main part of the talk is how you can create UI kit packages for multiple frameworks from web components. So till now we've seen how we can create web components via Stencil. A unique feature of Stencil is that it can output React, Angular, and Vue packages from your core Stencil web components. Uh, they do this with the help of output targets. So what you need to do is they have guides over there for each framework. So this is an example that is shown on the right side over here, with which you just pass in the library name which you want it to be, and where you want to like generate all of those React wrapper components. And when you run build in your core project, all of those libraries will get created, and you can just ship them easily after this. So this is our Dite meeting component, which is rendered in React, Vue.js, and HTML. So you can see pretty much all of these packages use the web components from a single source. When handling multiple interlinked packages, you'll probably need a monorepo because that makes your developer experience smoother, and you can streamline your build tooling as well alongside it. So we've created a monorepo starter with which you can use as a reference if you are starting out with Stencil with building a UI kit in Stencil.js. So now generating documentation. So providing good developer experience. Also, you need to provide good documentation for users who are using those components. So Stencil provides out-of-the-box options to generate documentation as well. For just internal documentation, you can just generate normal readmes along with the components. But if you need to build your own custom documentation like we have over at our own documentation site, you can output a JSON, process it, and build your own UI from it. So this is the UI of our documentation, how it looks like. We have the Dite grid component. So all of this is rendered from that JSON, which we talked about earlier. We have a live preview wherein users can tweak the Dite grid component and see the live preview. And we also document the props directly in our documentation. Now, since this is a FOSS talk, we'd also like to highlight open source contributions which we made. So we open sourced the grid handling logic, which we have over at our in our now grid components. So we have packaged all of that into a single lightweight npm package, which is called good grid, with which you can create a responsive grid effectively. So you can see the participant count. You can tweak the aspect ratio gap, and it just renders the participant tiles in a beautiful fashion. So you can see a pretty simple React usage code over there. You can just pass in your dimensions, the participant count, aspect ratio, gap, and just pass in those width, height, and the dimensions you get from the get position utility, and this your UI will be rendered. So now I think I have very little time, so I'll just go over this quickly. Another thing now UI kit is that this UI which you see over here, this is the Dite meeting component. All of this is rendered not by using individual components like writing the code on our own, but we use a custom rendering logic which takes the layout hierarchy in an object format, and we render the entire UI from there itself. So yeah, so this is how our layout hierarchy in our object format looks like. We pass in the children inside those elements like this. So Dite header can have Dite grid, pagination, clock, participant count, viewer count, and all of that. And users can directly tweak this object. And like we also have a UI kit builder utility which lets you find and replace any children or um, add any of their own components as well. So this makes it pretty easy to customize the layout inside, like deeply nested layouts inside components as well. So that's it. That's pretty much it.
Okay. The floor is now open for questions. So if anybody needs to ask something, please
Yeah.
raise your hands and I'll pass the mic on to you.
So from what I know about design system, right, we use React Storybook for uh,
Yeah.
component designing, right? So did you? I mean, I understand that that is more specific to React, and what you've mentioned, Stencil is across various frameworks. So any difference? Have you used it, or any difference you specifically recommend Stencil for, or am I getting the whole concept wrong between
Yeah.
the two?
So story block, if I get it right, is basically you document your document like you components inside it, right?
Yeah. For
But Stencil is a framework like React with which you can generate web components essentially.
so for here also we do generate components, and we directly derive, like, use that in our
Okay.
repo. So from what I know,
Yeah.
it's similar, but I think Stencil has a more varied framework.
Yeah, it is like an all-in-one framework. It's not just the core APIs, but it provides a like all-in-one solution. Like build your own custom elements, documentation. There's proper tooling as well for everything.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Got it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any more questions?
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Vaibhav, for that wonderful session. Next up, we have Mukul Ramchandani with a wonderful talk on what and why Shadow DOM works. So he is a front-end developer at Hubilo and is also a person who's deeply passionate about JavaScript and the React ecosystem. So the stage is yours, Mukul. Have fun.
Is visible and I am audible. Uh, okay. Yeah. Cool. So we don't usually look at our shadows these days, right? Like because we are busy in our phones. That's what my mom tells me. The second part, of course. So yeah. So the title of the talk today is how the shadow DOM has got you covered. It's not has it ever got you covered. No, it has already is. And yeah, we are going to look at how the how part of it. So let's just get started. Hey everyone, I'm Mukul. I work as a front-end engineer at Hubilo, and indie music and board games are the two things I'm very passionate about. So I know the best town for board games in Bangalore. So feel free to ask me for that. Cool. So what is Shadow DOM? So it's just a normal DOM tree, hidden DOM tree inside the document object model, with some differences on how it behaves with the rest of the light DOM. So for this talk, what we are going to say the normal DOM we talk about as a light DOM, and the corresponding to it would be a shadow DOM. So as you can see here, the placeholder of the text area, it exists somewhere in the DOM, right? But we just don't ever see it. It exists in the shadow DOM, and someone must have written the code of choose file button. No file chosen. We just type input type file and we just access it. But someone must have written a code like accessing the file system and opening the file dialog and all of that. So where it's all written, I'll tell you, it's the shadow DOM. So okay, it's time. Let's just look for the shadows. I mean, not mine. I mean, but yeah. So yeah, a git checkout. Look for the shadows. I think I'm already on this branch. Cool. So what we're gonna do? I'm quickly going to show you this. So as you can see here on this web page, I have three simple plain HTML elements. Which are these? One is text area, one is choose file, and one is this select drop down. All elements have its own way of like presentation. It's written somewhere in the browser, but let's see how we can find out and how we can modify it. So there's a settings button here, right? We click on the settings button, there is the elements, and if we click on the elements, there is a show user agent shadow DOM. The moment we click on this, we will be able to see a complete shadow DOM of every element that we have. So let's just say if I go here, if I click here, you can see that there is a text area and then there is a shadow root to it. So once, and in this shadow root, you can see that there is a div inside it and there is a pseudo class which we usually use CSS pseudo selectors to give CSS to the placeholder. So let's say if you want to change this gray color to the red color to the placeholder, we use this pseudo class. And in the same manner here, there is a style which is display block important. So if you give something important in the shadow DOM, it's like this is going to be a fixed thing and you cannot replace it. Even you cannot override it. So yeah, so this is all in the same manner. There is a shadow DOM to this element as well. There's a shadow DOM to select option, and there are a bunch of few built-in HTML elements where there is a shadow DOM. So how it's different? What exactly are the differences between the light DOM and the shadow DOM, right? So it's the creation and the usage. We are quickly going to look into it, how you can create it, how you can use the shadow DOM. And the two beautiful features of the shadow DOM are encapsulation and composability. So encapsulation is pretty much important, and that is the reason why we all like pizza, like all the veggies, everything just in one in the palm of my hand. Amazing. So if we get something like this in the component format, I'm sure we're gonna like it. So encapsulation, the composability, and this and not the least one, but greater precedence than the light DOM. So let's say you have an element which has a shadow DOM and which has a light DOM as well. So browsers by default have a greater precedence for the shadow DOM. So they're going to show the content what is there in the shadow DOM rather than in the light DOM. This is a default behavior. So built-in components, built-in HTML components which have a shadow DOM of its own, which have shadow of its own, right? So one is input text areas, content editables used for text editors, video, audio, the seek bar, the play pause button, the CC, all these buttons. Someone must have created it and the working of it, right? Where it exists in the shadow DOM. The select option we just saw, and there are a few other elements. Of course, you must have, there's an accordion, there's a section element, all those sorts of element, right? So now moving on, how to create and use the shadow DOM. So once as you can see here, there's a simple script tag. I'm just creating an element header and attaching a shadow. So this is a browser API that we have it, attach shadow, and here is the mode open. What is mode close? We are going to look into that later, but keep that in mind. We usually go with the mode open, right? So you can see that we are attaching a shadow to it, just like the shadow was already attached to the input elements and other video elements in the DOM. So we can attach to shadow DOM, and if we give inner HTML hello shadow DOM, so whatever, if you write in the header, it won't show that. Instead, it will show what is there in the shadow DOM because it has a greater precedence over it. Cool. Introducing web components. I know we heard like a lot about web components from WebHub, but in this talk we're going to look at the web components from the lens of shadow DOM. There are different ways to look at the web component, like creating UI kit, but now we are going to look at the how from the lens of completely from the web from the lens of shadow DOM. So as you can see here, there's a simple web component. I have this. To create a web component, you have to use this class thing in the JavaScript, and as you can see here, class my cool button extend HTML element, right? And then these are the three beautiful APIs available for in the web component, which is constructor, which initializes like how your web component, as soon as it mounts, is gonna look. It's the constructor initialization, connected callback. Most of you are from the React background, so mount and unmount. Like connected callback is simply mount. Whenever components enters the DOM, do you want to do something? Do it. Connected callback is for that, and disconnected callback is basically the unmount. And then we have a API where the magic happens. Custom elements dot define my cool button. So what you can do is you can use this my cool button inside the HTML, right? Okay, next. Cool. Git checkout web components. We are going to do this. Let's just move ahead first. So one of the important elements, like how we're gonna check out that, and we're gonna look at it. But let's just understand these two important properties of encapsulation, right? Which are those? Scope DOM and scope styles. So I'm gonna have my own DOM. I'm gonna have my own styles. Like if you want to override it, you have to little work hard. You have to like pseudo selectors. Like you make sure that you're overriding it. Yeah, I can have my class main, and my other DOM also can have my class main. So they won't clash into it, because that is what shadow DOM allows you. It allows you to have the encapsulation. You can see that after attaching a shadow in the inner HTML, I can have my own style tags, and then I can have my own complete div element, right? Encapsulation. Then composability, like any component becomes powerful when you can pass data into it, right? What are one of the ways which we can pass the data through React? Amazing props. So in the same manner, if you want to pass the data into the component, in the web component inside the shadow dom, what is something API available? It's known as slots. So slots are default web browser API available, which you can use it to pass the data. Let's say you want to change. So here you can also pass the fallback content. So here, as you can see, there is a slot, there is an image, there is a slot closing tag. So here, if the image is not passed, this is the fallback image that will be shown. Like, and if the image is passed, the image would come. In the same manner, you can use slots to pass the data. So this allows the composability. Now event model, right? So event model is simply same as the current event model we have for the light dom, the bubbling behavior, all of that. It can also bubble the usual event, selection change, mouse change, hover, all those events would bubble up as the light as it's there for the light dom. But you can have your composability go further by having a custom events, custom events. So you can create, of course, you can create your own event, like using dispatch, which is again a JavaScript API, and you create your own event. And if you give compose flag as true, which is false here, if you give compose flag as true, it's gonna have the bubbling behavior until that shadow dom only. So you can use that and create, you can use it in many creative ways, and one of the creative ways we are going to look at the last. So cool. Now, wait. I just told you that I'll check out to the web components, and yeah, let me do that. Okay, I do have that branch. Okay. Yeah. So I've just checked out to the branch called as web components one, and I'm gonna go here. I'm gonna press the refresh button. Oh, awesome. So as you can see this button, right? You can see if I go here, if I inspect this button, you can see that there is a complete button here, which is my button, right? Not so cool, I know. Hence my button. So my button has a shadow root, right? And it has a shadow root, but it has this span element which has a slot to it. So when I click on this slot, it will take me to the shadow dom, and it will say that here is the title, here is how you can pass the name to it, like, and here is the initial state. So we're going to just look at in the next 30 seconds the code of it. So as you can see, there is a script tag, right? Okay, it's visible. So it's a script tag. Here's a constructor. We always call super in the constructor. It makes sure that it initializes it well. So there is a shadow root. We are attaching a shadow with mode open. There is an inner HTML, and we are giving it a complete inner HTML to it. And then we are giving it a hover stage. Like when I hover it, it should turn to background green, light green, and then we have a div here, right? Which has this classes which are just from the style component. Then we have a name here. We have a slot, name, title, and then button. This is the fallback content. So as you can see here, I have in my button, I have given a slot title because my slot had a name called as title. And if I have given a title here, but let's say if I remove it, it should fall back to something called as button, right? uh, cool. Awesome. It's fall back uh, to the button element, right? We're going to just replace it so you understand that the purpose of the slot. Cool. And there we go. There we have a title. Live refresh is such an amazing technology. It's cool. So we just saw the web components on the lens of Shadow DOM and how you can encapsulate and bring in the and unleash the power of web components of passing data if you want it. But here's the thought, right? So knowledge is that tomato is a vegetable. This is knowledge. But wisdom is not putting the tomato as a pizza toppings. Maybe you like pizza toppings as a here's the real thought, right? Here's the real thought. Knowledge is knowing that tomato is a fruit. Wisdom is not putting in the fruit salad. We all can agree to that. Seems like the whole crowd likes tomatoes. It's okay. Cool. So what we are going to do, so we got self-awareness, right? Something that already existed in the DOM, which was shadow DOM. And once we have a self-awareness in life, what we do with self-awareness? We go into the existentialism. No. We simply find a purpose in life, right? And with purpose, we build something. So that is what we are going to do. We now have a self-awareness of shadow DOM. Let's see what we can build something about it. So git checkout build mode. Let's go. Okay. I'll go here. I'll do git checkout build mode. I do have a branch here. Okay. all right, I've checked out to the build mode. So what exactly we are going to build? Let's see what is something we can build only using the shadow DOM and some event model of it and web components, how we can build it. So here's the thing. As when I was a kid and when I was first exposed to the internet, so what happened was I used to read on the internet. That those are the days of back Yahoo Messenger. It's some vertical uh, UI thing used to come, and then I used to like, okay, what these guys are writing, I don't understand the vocabulary of it. Back then I was a kid, my vocabulary was not great, still not. You already are judging it, I know. But I was like, what if there is a way, if I select that word and the meaning appears then and there, I have to copy that meaning and paste it in the Google or Yahoo back then, and then find the meaning of it, or take the Webster dictionary along with I'm sitting on the internet. Weird. But what if there is a way, if we select that word, if we double click on a word, the word gets selected, and the moment we see that, if we see a meaning of that word, like, oh, by the way, this presentation doesn't promote betting at all. The bet here, as you can see, the word is selected, and you can see the word pronunciation and the meaning of it. So we're going to see how we can build this and how we can use the shadow DOM with this thing. So yeah, so let's just go back to the building thing. I already built this for you, and yeah, so let's just look at this thing, how we can build this, but we are going to walk through the code, of course. So if I click here, awesome, I have a complete new branch checked out. So as you can see, there is a paragraph here. The moment I select any word, what should happen is it should simply show me the meaning of it, right? Cool. So I have a paragraph here, as you can see, but here's the component name. We are finally going to build something meaningful. No pun intended. So meaningful is something we are going to name it, and we're going to build meaningful web component. And here's the shadow root. So what we do, we assign a constructor, we assign a shadow root to it, and we define a inner HTML. We call the parent class as super. Inside it, we call the main class at main class, and we define our styles, right? So now that it should appear anywhere in the DOM, whenever I click it, I should give the position absolute and Z index as 999. That's such a developer thing to do, front end thing to do. But yeah, here's a small div I have. It's a super, it's a main, and here's the ID I have given meaningful. So this in the web component, THIS, this refers to the element of that component, and also the defined functions in the web component, right? So now here's the thing. Here's a very big shout out to the dictionary API, which is freely available on the internet, where you just pass a word. You can see there is a fetch API being called, and there is a word here. You just pass a word and you get a meaning. So huge shout out to this dictionary API.dev. Do check it out. They are providing free API to get the meanings of the word and pronunciation and not whatnot. So as you can see, here's a get meaning of the word. I've defined it. We're going to look into it soon. So here's the another function I have, handle selection change. So browser has this amazing API that event listener, whenever you select a word, you get the node of which the word is selected the moment you click it. So what we are going to use window.get selection, and we're going to get the window.get selection, and then after getting the window.get selection, we're going to focus that node. In that focus node, we're going to slice it. So selection gives me the API of start and end of the offset where the word is selected. Once I have these two numbers, I'm just going to, from the text content, slice it, and I have the selected word. The moment I have the selected word, what I'm going to do, I'm going to take the element from my shadow DOM. Like there was a div which had an ID meaningful. So I'm going to take that. I'm going to check if the selected word has a length or not. Once it has a length, I'm going to call this dot get word meaning. It's going to make a fetch call, get me the word meaning. And once I get the word meaning, what I'm doing is in the get word meaning, I'm get element by ID inner HTML, and here data, the simple thing, how getting the response and assigning that response into my component in using the inner HTML. I completely get your point that you're not convinced with the inner HTML part. Developer experience isn't that great, isn't it? If you're building something really big, but yeah, stick to it. I'm gonna tell you how you can solve that as well. So as you can see here, I have done some calculations like visibility. If the word is selected, then make sure that this my div element is visible, and and I've played something around that. Scroll by top, opacity, make it 1, if opacity make it 0, visibility hidden if the word is not selected, else if the word is not selected, make it hidden. And in the connected callback, as soon as my component mounts in the DOM, I make sure that I add a event listener handle selection change to this thing. And disconnected callback, of course, I can always what I can do, I can always like unmount and remove the event listener. And here's the browser API, custom elements dot define meaningful. And when I see here, I have a meaningful mounted, right? So let's just look at if it works. I just hope it works. Cool. So surrounded, loading. Oh wow. So here I have a surrounded, and here I have to encircle something or simultaneously extend it all directions. We are all surrounded by front-end developers today, isn't it? So yeah, let's just look at spiral. The meaning of the spiral we have here. But this is not it, right? This is not something. It's a paragraph that I pasted it. But I want to extend this something to something better. I want to use it in any website, right? So what I'm going to do, I'm going to copy this, right? And I will copy this. I will skip. While I was testing it, by the way, you can do this with any website because I have given position absolute. So yeah, it's going to work anywhere in the page. And I have this website where I have this complex paragraph. Okay, inspect. Okay, I have an inspect. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to paste. This is some random website. I'm going to paste it into the console. This is a complete code of what I wrote in this, and I'm going to paste this into the console. I'm just going to press enter and see if it works. Integral. It's not working. Why it's not working? Because I have not initialized it. So I'm just going to go here. I'm just going to go edit as HTML. And after I do edit as HTML, I'm going to find this body element, and I'm going to write MEANING, meaning full. Wow, something meaningful on this website, I hope. And the moment I click outside, it's get initialized. The moment this get initialized, I have a complete shadow root and I have the complete of it. So let's just see now. Integral. Wow. Every time I've done this so many times, but whenever I do it, I feel like I feel so good because this is the good part of the front end development. You write some gibberish and you see something happening visually. So it's the meaning of the word integral and meaning of the word meaning. Okay, no inception. Okay, so that's all. Cool. So we built it, but I told you we are going to talk about the close mode. But yeah, I just pasted that code in the console. But of course, you can build the Chrome extension out of it, and you can just and give a script tag to the users and build anything you want. So closed mode is something that whenever I was trying to access the shadow road with closed mode, what happens is users are not able to access the shadow road, so they cannot modify or change some elements. But this is not a security feature at all. You can always access it through the DOM or through the JS prototypes. But if you want to build something secured feature, just make sure you don't use the shadow DOM because you can use the iframe for it. So for example, reCAPTCHA. I know we all have spent finding crossroad for it, right? So it just so use iframe for it and not shadow DOM, but you can you do interesting things to uh, uh, use open mode to you can build whatever you want. Now next up, DX. So you can use template tag instead of inner HTML. What you can do with the template tag is you can write your code nicely, style tags, get the benefits of IntelliSense, and get done with it. Then there are really good framework. I've tried this Lit framework. It is lit for sure, which gives you a really good developer experience when writing web components and playing with the shadow DOM and web components. But the purpose of the talk was to make sure that we do it from the scratch, so you can build with scratch HTML as well and no frameworks. By the way, huge shout out to web dev article which helped me learn about the shadow DOM. If you want to learn deep, you can you this now. Just I promise this is the second last slide. The last slide, you know what it is. So here's the what inspired me really for this talk. You have to solve this riddle. Okay, I'm a tool that polishes your text. With me, your writing will be perfect. Spelling errors and punctuation, I'll fix them all, whatever it takes. Can you guess? Oh man, Grammarly. Thank you. So if you think about it, Grammarly, I know almost all of course, ChatGPT can do everything. What a great way to answer riddle, ChatGPT. All right. So yeah. So Grammarly, the core front end of the Grammarly, of course, this is a soft claim. I don't work in Grammarly, but yeah, when I looked into it through their web components, through their inside DOM, what happening, the whole core front end of it is built with the Shadow DOM. They act on your content. They help you do magical things. They send data to backend. They and front end they change, do a lot of DOM manipulation and seamlessly. So this is something inspired me to know more about it and build something I thought but I cannot go back in time to the Yahoo Messenger thing. No one wants to, I know. All right, so that's how the Shadow DOM has got you covered. Thank you.
Thank you, Mukul, for that very, very fun presentation. Unfortunately, we don't have time for questions right now, but you can always catch him
Yes.
during the break. So, next up, we all know that end to end integration testing plays a very crucial role in testing or validating the functionality of any application, especially with the growing complexities these days. So, to tell us more about how you can streamline your app quality with the Detox, an open source tool for the same, we have Shweta Tanwar on the stage. She is a mobile application developer at Rippling, and good luck to you.
Hello, everyone. All the tech enthusiasts and developers, a very good afternoon to all of you. I'm Shweta, and I'm working as a senior software engineer in Rippling, and I'm thrilled to be here as your speaker for this amazing tech talk. Throughout my career, I have been privileged enough to be working on numerous projects where I had witnessed firsthand the challenges and frustrations that come when it comes to ensuring the app quality. it became evident that we needed robust and efficient solutions to tackle these issues hand on. Enter Detox. This is an invaluable tool that has revolutionized the way we approach the app testing and the quality assurance. With its powerful capabilities and seamless integration with our development workflows, Detox has become an indispensable companion in our quest for bug-free, reliable, and user-friendly application. And that's what we are going to talk about, that is streamlining the app quality using Detox. So, in today's talk, I aim to deep dive into the world of app quality, its importance and challenges faced by the developers, understanding the E2E testing, the challenges in traditional app testing, and using Detox as a solution, exploring its features, its workflow, and the best practices, all aimed at helping you to streamline your app quality process and take your development efforts to new heights. So, let's get started and delve into the exciting realm of streamlining app quality. So, to begin with, what exactly is app quality? It refers to the overall level of excellence, reliability, and user satisfaction in a mobile application. So, I'm basically a mobile application developer, and for us, having the app quality, it matters a lot. It is of paramount importance for we developers as it directly impacts the user engagement, retention, and ultimately the success of our application. High quality apps tend to receive the positive reviews, attract more users, and generate higher revenue, and that's what we are being paid for and we are living for. So, importance of app quality. So, there are some key reasons for why the app quality is actually crucial for us and why does it matter. First of all, the user experience. We have like very high expectations whenever we install any of the application. A well-designed and user-friendly application, it enhances our customer our satisfaction and promotes positive word of mouth recommendations. We all might be knowing about the CRUD application and its UX, it's amazing. And that's what we look for in any of the application which we are using. Then we have retention and engagement. We are more likely to continue using the application, which functions flawlessly, deliver values, and offer a delightful experience. Quality apps with regular updates and bug fixes can help to retain V users and increase the engagement. Brand reputation. The quality of an app reflects on the reputation of the app's developer or the company. We are associated, a user associate basically a poorly designed application with the lack of professionalism and may develop the negative perceptions about the brand also. I hope you might remember that when Paytm was first launched, its UX was very, very bad. And that was the reason initially it was not being adapted that much. But later on, when they improved the UX, it actually got a very good brand reputation, it got good retention and engagement, and a very good user experience. Then we have monetization. The high quality apps are basically more likely to attract the paying customers and generate revenue through in app purchases, subscriptions, and advertising. But still, when we talk about app quality, there are a lot of things which we face the challenges when taking care of it. First is compatibility. So basically, all the applications, they need to work seamlessly across the various devices, operating system, and screen sizes. And to ensure this compatibility across this wide range of devices, that is something a very complicated task. And with this rapid technological advancement, it requires we, the developers, to be updated with the constantly evolving the landscape, the operating systems which are arriving new, the devices and emerging technologies. Then testing and debugging. A comprehensive testing is crucial to identify and fix bugs, compatibility issues, and performance bottlenecks. The user expectations, we have to take care of that as well in order to make the quality of the application better. Then time and resource constraints. Developing a high quality app, it requires a significant investment of time, effort, and resources. And the limited budget, tight deadlines, and competing priorities can pose challenges to developing this top notch quality of the application. Now, addressing these challenges requires a combination of skill development team, a robust testing process, which we'll be taking care of in this talk, a continuous improvement through user feedback, and a commitment to provide an exceptional user experience. Now, how to achieve it? Now we have taken care of like what are the challenges, what exactly is the app quality, but how can we achieve it? So app quality is a multifaceted endeavor that requires careful planning, diligent execution, and a focus on continuous improvement. And we can achieve it with robust testing and ensuring the quality. So now robust testing refers to a application which involves execution performance and the stability of the application under different conditions, where the major goal is to identify defects, bugs, and potential issues before we make the release available for all the users. Now, there's a term software testing pyramid in our development, which is basically, you can see over here, it's a visual representation of the recommended distribution of tests in a testing strategy. It emphasizes the importance of having a strong foundation of unit tests, followed by a moderate number of integration tests and a small number of end-to-end testing. So now I'll explain each layer in the software testing pyramid. To begin with, the base of the pyramid is the unit test. So these basically focus on testing individual units of code, such as functions, methods, or classes in isolations. These are typically written and are executed frequently during the development process, where the aim is to validate the behavior and the correctness. Coming to the middle layer, we have integration tests, which sit in the middle and they focus on testing the interaction and the integration between the different components or the modules of an application. They verify the components work together correctly and the data is flowing smoothly between them. Then at the top of the layer is the end-to-end test, which basically validates the complete flow and the functionality of an application from start to finish. They simulate the real-world user scenarios and interactions with the applications. These distribution ensures efficient testing and quick feedback, faster execution times, and better maintainability. Now, for this talk, we'll be focusing on understanding what exactly is end-to-end integration. So this is a testing approach that evaluates the interactions and behavior of multiple components or systems with an application to ensure they work together as expected and focus on testing the entire flow of the application from start to finish. So if we take any application example, so the unit test will be checking the functionality of a button. Then integration test will be the screen in that particular screen, that button is working fine. When we're tapping on it, let's say a login screen, the login button was a unit test. Now, when you tap on that login button, the functionality that is working fine, that is the integration test. And the end-to-end test will be from login flow to your app screen flow and to logout flow. The whole life cycle of the application, that is the end-to-end test. Now, coming to the benefits of end-to-end testing. So first of all, it helps in like detecting the issues because it checks the interaction between the different components of the system. So it ensures that all the integrated parts work harmoniously, reducing the chances of unexpected errors or failures. It validates the user flow and the business logic by testing the integration of various components end to end. It helps like validating the accuracy and the integrity of the business logic. Then improved quality assurance. It provides a more comprehensive assessment of an application's functionality and behavior by catching integrated related issues early in the development process. And finally, enhancing the user experience. By verifying the end-to-end flow, this testing approach helps ensure a seamless user experience. It validates that all the components, systems, and interactions function cohesively, leading to a smooth and satisfying user journey. So overall, this E2E testing or the end-to-end testing plays a vital role in ensuring the stability, reliability, and the quality of the application, which is ultimately our goal to have a better app quality. Now, we are talking about the integration testing, but there are other traditional testing methods as well. So the manual testing, we all might have heard of manual testers in a company who test the applications. And there are other testing approaches as well. Since they are good, but they still have some disadvantages and some limitations. So if I talk about manual testing, first is they're time consuming and error prone because it is a labor intensive process which requires the testers to execute the test cases step by step. It is a time consuming, especially when it comes about like checking a complex application. Then we have inconsistent results. Since these are being tested by the people manually, so it can vary based on the tester's knowledge, skill, and the attention to detail. And it's difficult to cover all the scenarios because manual tester may struggle to cover all the possible test case scenario when he's testing at that particular state of mind, especially when it is complex or has a large number of features. Similarly, when we talk about the other automated testing approaches, they do have the drawbacks like fragile tests that break easily, a lot of flakiness they do occur, slow execution times, and the lack of support for complex user interactions. To address these limitations, a balanced testing approach that combines both manual and automated testing can be beneficial. And here comes the detox. It is an open source end-to-end testing framework specifically designed for mobile applications, developed and maintained by Wix. It provides a robust testing capabilities for both iOS and Android platforms. What are its key features and why actually do we want to use it? First, it provides full control over app state and interactions. It enables interactions with various app components such as buttons, forms, navigation events, all of these things allowing for comprehensive testing scenarios. It is powerful, it has powerful synchronization and wait mechanisms. It provides real device testing for accurate results because usually we do test in simulated environment, but a lot of things change when we actually test it on the real devices. It has support for React Native and native applications. It has automatic test execution and parallelization. So when our number of tests increases, it's become like quite common that your testing time is increasing. But Detox provides us to parallelize them so that allowing the multiple tests to run simultaneously, which can significantly reduce the overall testing time. Easy test configuration setup. It has the documents are like superb. You can easily set it up and get started. And extensive debugging capabilities. We can easily debug them. What exactly is the issue? So by offering these features, Detox aim to simplify the process of end-to-end testing for mobile apps, providing developers with a reliable and efficient framework for ensuring the quality and the functionality of their applications. So now we'll talk about the workflow, how we can proceed with the Detox. So it involves basically several steps. So here's the overview of the steps. First is setting up the Detox. This involves installing Detox and configuring it for your specific platform, iOS or Android. Detox has like a very good documentation which can be referred to in order to go through the setup process. Then writing test cases. Since like we have done the setup, we now need to write the test cases. We can use JavaScript or TypeScript as per your preferences. It has a very declarative syntax to define the desired user interactions and expected outcomes. You can use the Detox API to interact with the UI elements and navigate between screens, enter text, perform gestures, and make assertions about whatever the app state you want to check for. Now we have written the test cases. Now we need to build the application for the testing purpose. So before running the test, we actually need to build and prepare the app for testing. It has given some commands which allows you to build the application with the specific configuration required for the testing. Now, once the app is built, you can execute the test. It provides a very common like CLI interface that allows you to run the test. You can specify the test runner, whether it be like Jest or Mocha, whatever you want, and provide any additional configuration options required. Now, inspecting the test results. Since we are executing the test, we now need to inspect the results, whether they are right or wrong, and accordingly generate the report. So it provides a detailed test result and report. Once the test runs completely, we get like the artifacts and we get the logs, useful reports, and we can go through them and see the stack traces and identify the bug or the issue if there is any. And based on that, we can analyze the failures and then accordingly we can debug it. And at the end, iterative test development and maintenance. As the app evolves, a lot of things get added and removed. So the Detox test suite needs to be updated accordingly as per your additions and removal of the features. You can iterate on the test cases, modify the existing ones, and ensure that the test suite adequately covers the critical user flows and the functionality. So by following this workflow, Detox enables efficient and reliable end-to-end testing of mobile apps, and that's what we were looking for. Now, there are some best practices which we need to take care of when we are executing or writing the Detox test cases. First of all, we need to prioritize test coverage based on critical user flow. So every application has few flows which are like very critical and which as a company, we don't want that to be broken. So example, like the payment flows, that is like the most critical flow of any of the application. So we need to focus on testing the most critical user flows and functionalities of your application first. So identify the key features that are essential to the user experience and ensure thorough testing coverage for those areas. Then use descriptive test names and organize the test suites. Maintain clear and descriptive test names that accurately reflect the purpose and scenario being tested. So let's say today I have written some test case using some gibberish name, and tomorrow some other developer comes. It should be well readable enough for that person to know what exactly this particular test suite is testing for. Then implementing code review and maintainable test code. We should adopt the code review practices for even the Detox test code so that your application code is being checked and reviewed to identify the potential issues or any test cases missed or not. Regularly update Detox, and we need to be like, we can leverage the community support. They have like a very good community support and a very good time for the revert as well. Then we all usually use the CI/CD pipeline. So detox can be integrated with a CI/CD pipeline as well. And setting up the automated text execution as part of your build process, it ensures that the tests are running consistently whenever you are building your application or sending a release. We can even use mocking and stubbing as per appropriate and as per the requirement. And at the end, capturing and utilizing the test artifacts. So whenever like we are running the tests on the CI/CD, we it's a very good thing if we have the test artifacts so that to know what exactly was the reason of the failure, and accordingly we can debug it and find it. So by following these practices, we can enhance the effectiveness and we can leverage the max from the detox. So now to conclude, let's recap what exactly did we cover over here. First, throughout this tech talk, we have delved into the world of the app quality and the challenges faced by the developers in ensuring a seamless user experience. We explored the limitations of manual testing and the other automated testing approaches. Then we came to the detox, which is like a very powerful solution, as it's like open source. It's like for end-to-end integration testing. It helps us to gain full control of the application. It provides like a lot of features. Then, by leveraging detox, we can streamline the app quality process by creating maintainable and efficient test suites. Now, at the end, I like want to encourage all of you to explore detox for your app testing needs. Its active community support, compatibility with iOS and Android, and a comprehensive feature set make it valuable tool for your testing arsenal. These are the references to the detox. As I said, it has a very good documentation which you can refer to. If you want to learn like about React Native, so the React Native documentation is like again very good. For the testing methodology, this developer experience article was very good and detailed enough to explain you what are the testing strategies, methods, why to use and when to use. So yeah, so before we conclude, like, is there any questions which you guys might be having for it? For the mobile, they are the test runners, but for the mobile application, we want to run. So end-to-end integration testing is basically covering the whole flow of the application from start to the end. A test runner won't suffice it because we have to run that whole scenario in a simulated environment. You have to start with the login flow, do the business logic, whatever it is, and end it. A test runner won't suffice it because first of all, you're running in an actual device or the mobile environment, which actually behaves differently. Now, before after that, you have to work and find out like if a test is breaking, where it is breaking, why it is breaking, and to debug that. So yes, it uses the Mocha and the Jest runners, but on top of that, it is built up.
Any other questions?
Hey, you talked about mobile and native testing this, right? But a lot of mobile apps have like web embedded in them. Like for example, authentication flows are usually opened in a Chrome tab, and then it happens through that. So does Detox help with that too? Like, can we run tests on the web page that the mobile opens?
So regarding that web page, no, exactly, no, you cannot straightforward. You cannot achieve that. But let's say you have a case when you press on the login button, you are going to a web view for the login purpose. So what you can do is that complete flow needs to be handled. Basically, it needs to be tested in the web part. But what as a mobile in the mobile application we can do is we can add in a way that I am expected to receive a callback because ultimately you will receive a callback from the web view and wait for it. And once that callback is received, that particular data is received, do your move your navigate to your main screen, dashboard screen, or whatever it is. So that flows can be covered, but we have to tweak it a bit in order to ensure that whatever it's happening. But yes, you cannot exactly debug the web view. You have to use other things with the detox.
Yeah. Thank you, Shweta, for that wonderful session.
Thank you so much.
So we are going to be dispersing for a small tea break now. So please note that it's only 15 minutes and have fun, walk around, and be back in your seats in 15. So yeah, thank you. All right, everyone, welcome back. So, for the final talk of the day, before we move on to the panel discussion, we have Pushkar, a solution architect at Geeky Ants, with an really interesting topic to talk about. That is the Open Source Balancing Act, harmonizing between ethics and sustainability. So, without any further ado, the stage is yours.
Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to Geeky Ants. For those who I have not met yet, I am Pushkar Kumar. I work as a solution architect at Geeky Ants, and I have been associated with Geeky Ants for almost 6 years now. My day-to-day life at Geeky Ants juggle in between, various different tech stacks such as React, React Native, Flutter, backend microservices, sometimes blockchain. So yeah, let's get started. So while I was filling the proposal form, there were a lot of technical topics that were there in my mind. But considering the time factor of 10 minutes, I decided to keep my talk more philosophical rather than covering any framework, any technologies, because we do that a lot on Twitter, Reddit, LinkedIn, Udemy, everywhere, and in our day-to-day work life as well. So yeah, let's get started. So some of you would already know about Geeky Ants. The very foundation of Geeky Ants is the open source contribution that we have done over the years. Um, so I thought, like, why not go back to my colleagues and ask them about their experience on doing open source. Some of them are managing big component libraries, some of them are managing their own open source personal projects. So my talk basically revolves around that experience of balancing out how to balance out an open source project. Yeah, so uh, say what are different phases of an open source project. So some of you might be doing it as a part of an organized group where a group of developers are going to open source a project, or you already have a project individually and you want to open source it, right? And this is completely based out of all the discussions that I have with numerous people within the company itself. So doing an open source, and someone told me that doing an open source is like, or starting an open source is like a maze of kaleidoscope where each blocks looks very beautiful, looks very bright and shiny, but you end up with different challenges and obviously opportunities at different point of time. So the very first phase of any open source project is basically the dilemma of ethics, right? What type of open source that we are going to do. So I basically categorize into these 4 points. So first part is the license. License in any open source project is related to having a pet, right? So you can be a dog person or you can be a cat person. So similarly, you may want a license which is which requires certain maintenance, like a general public license, or you may want a very low maintenance pet like an MIT license, right? So first thing that we do for any open source project is to basically select what type of license that we are going to have. The second comes security and the privacy. So for security and privacy, open source projects are already like in glass houses, right? I mean, everyone can peep into your projects. So security and privacy becomes like the main concern here. And it's a big challenge because everyone can peep into your project. So you are continuously under scrutiny. The third challenge and the third is the diversity and inclusion. So when you start an open source project, one of the main thing is that you should have people coming in and trying to contribute to that project. You would definitely need diversity because that brings in different type of ideas, and everyone from different background will add uh, certain additions to the project. So it's like you're going on a potluck dinner and where everyone is bringing their own unique dish. Then comes the ethics of contribution. So most of the open source project that we see that there is a protagonist who is the creator of the project, and the entire project depends on, select group of people. So it becomes very important that we appreciate contributions from everyone. So it would be like a party where, say, different people have come up with the gifts. Some have very big expensive gifts, but some has brought small yet very very uh, very important additions to that overall gift. So it's important that we appreciate contributions. Maybe it's very large, maybe it's very small, but contribution to an open source project becomes very very important. So once we are done with these, we have a team, and now say suppose we have a project that is there on GitHub, people are using it. uh, then comes the main challenge, right? And this is where most of the projects die. So I basically call it like camping in wilderness. So you have open source project, and now random developers or community people will come, and they will have their own ideas. Now here is the challenge, that a protagonist has to not only set the camp, but he has to arrange for water, he has to arrange for food, but also make sure that the campsite is clean, so that anyone can, like, say, future campers, when they're coming in, they get it nice and tidy. So this is where the real challenge starts. And one of the challenge that has with any open source project is basically the sustainability. So first is the burnout, right? So on an individual level, I think most of you would have open source some type of projects, and you see that after certain issues, the burnout starts creeping in, especially if the project depend on very few select group of people, especially the protagonist, who is basically the ideator. He is the one who is reviewing all the PRs, and he is the one basically meditating through all the conflicts. So burnout is the first thing. The second thing is funding. Obviously, you need motivations. One motivation is to contribute to the community, but funding again becomes important factor where the sustainability of the projects comes into the question. The third is the buzz factor, which is a very important factor. So you see all the open source projects that we have, successful open projects that we have, uh, they all depend on initial contribution of a very select group of people, right? Whether it's like React, GraphQL, any Kubernetes, there are like 3 4 developers that started it. And then suppose if the entire project would depend only on those 3 people, we would not have React Native, or even different open source project in the state that we have right now. So different people came in at different point of time and started contributing to the project. So it becomes very important that the entire knowledge is not concentrated among select group of people. And then the project abandonment. So this is like very common. I mean, we all start certain type of projects, and then after certain amount of time, because of like various reasons, it goes under like we just abandon it, right? Then what I so through all these challenges, what I realize is that the life of a open source maintainer, open source project contributor, is like life of this guy. I mean, he's basically walking on a rope with both hands tied, and he has to fight the villain as well, right? So a big shout out to all the open source contributors. Okay, so how do we manage it? So basically striking a balance. So first is the community practice. So community practice is very important. It's like you're basically, trying to create a garden where you need water, you need soil, you need plants, and it takes a lot of effort. Like occasionally you will have weeds also, you still have to plug that out. So community practice, to build community practice is very very difficult. And that's why we have events like these. Then comes to development practice. Now development practice, I consider development practice as an alarm system for your project, because any open source project continuously comes under scrutiny. There are random people can come and can raise PRs, can contribute to the project. So it becomes very important that we have a mechanism to scan through all those contributions as well. And then the documentation and the mentorship. Documentation is obviously like a map, right? So any new person who's coming through, they should know like what to do with this project. So documentation and mentorship becomes equally important. So as I mentioned that this is based on the experience that we had like at Geekians, the number of open source projects that we have done. Some of you would already know about native base, right? And 3 minutes. Okay, fine, no problem. Okay, so some of you would already know about native base and different type of open source projects that we have worked on. So please check out native base. I think you all already know about it, so you have already mentioned that. There's one more full stack framework that we are working on. It's known as GlueStack. We have already released GlueStack UI. It's still in, I think, alpha, right? Yeah, yeah, it's in beta. So you can try this. This is again a cross-platform component library for React and React Native. And other than that, you can scan through this QR. It will take you to our GitHub page. Like you can see all type of open source project, not limited to React and React Native, but very useful libraries in Flutter. A lot of case studies in blockchain also. So yeah, please check that out. Thank you.
Thank you, Pushkar, for that wonderful presentation and talk. So next up, we have the final event, which is perhaps the most awaited as well. Yes, most awaited event, which is the panel discussion. And that is based on a very interesting topic as well, securing front lines, best practices for front-end web security. So without any much delay, please help me welcome our panelists onto the stage. Ruchika Gupta. Yes. Anantu, Anantu Kanive, Divyanshu Maitani, Vijay Anand, and Ashwini Manoj.
Okay, hi everyone. Hello. How are you all doing? Okay, that's good to know. So yes, so let's start the panel discussion then. As mentioned, the topic is securing the frontline, best practices for front end web security. I'm Ashwini Manoj. I work at Introspect as a software engineer. I have dealt with a lot of security issues throughout my career. Ensuring front end security has been a big hassle, but at the same time, done with the right intention and knowledge, it can go well for you. And the rest of the panelists are going to talk about their experiences. So, yeah, let me hand it over to Divyanshu.
Hi everyone, I'm Divyanshu. I work on front-end infrastructure at Razorpay. So just a brief intro, my love for FOSS initiated back in college when I tried out Linux, one of the best piece of software. Uh, and About security, I think it's pretty interesting topic, and I think something that we don't pay that much attention to. But yeah, I'll be sharing some of my experience dealing with DDoS at Razorpay. Hope that will be helpful.
Hello everyone, my name is Ruchika Gupta and I'm thrilled that I got an opportunity to speak with you all today. I have 5 years of working experience as an engineer at Geeky Ants, and within this small tenure, I got opportunity to work with different varieties of project, ranging from startup to enterprise level. With this experience, I would like to share my experience and learn from you all guys related to security. Thank you.
Yeah. Hi. I hope you can hear me, right? So I'm Vijay. I work at Observer.ai, right, as a lead security engineer, right? So I see every day like how the developer are really hassling about the security, and then when I talk about security, when I say that hey, we need to do something, they're like, okay, we have to do this as well. so so this is how like I get a response, right? So yeah, let's learn something today about security, and feel free to ask any questions if you guys have. Yeah.
Hey guys, I'm Anantu. I work as a front-end engineer at Smallcase. So Smallcase is like a investment product. So security is pretty important over there because we are kind of dealing with people's money, and like security is pretty important when it comes to investments and brokerage, those kind of investment products. And we're also like regulated. Like we need to make sure a lot of security practices are in place. So yeah, I mean, it's been a roller coaster ride working with small case, and I've learned a lot over there. So yeah, I'm like looking forward to share some of those experiences. Yeah.
Okay, thanks all of you, and that was great to know. So Anantu, like start with you. What did you mean by when you say security is important? Like, what do you have in mind when you say that?
Right. I think we can talk about web security in general, like front end, like what front end developers have to do to ensure security. To just go back a little, I think we'll have to understand why web is a little different than other softwares out there. Like we're all told to not click on random attachments in our email, and it can possibly execute some code and like steal your data, run havoc over your computer. But then we do exactly that when we request for a web page on our web browser. So a web browser just downloads HTML, and it also downloads JavaScript, and it just executes that JavaScript like unconditionally. Like there's nothing stopping that JavaScript from doing things that you don't want to do. So that is itself a dangerous place to start with. So if you go back in web history, a lot of these systems were built without security in mind, and a lot of things have gone wrong. uh, so this inherent fact that JavaScript is just downloaded from a source that we have to trust, and it just executes in our computer is a dangerous precedent. And then web browsers have come a long way to prevent stuff from going down. So that's the starting point of how we need to approach web security. Like it's just code that we execute. And the second thing is web browsers have come a long way in security. Like even though we download some random code from the internet, we still see that right now all our secure systems are on the web. Like if you want to do a payment, it goes to a web page, like let's say on Razorpay. The main interface is on on a web view. So we as web developers have a lot of responsibility on our hands to secure, to build secure systems for users to use and to not screw up, because we are like the first interface where people use it. Yeah, so I'd like to know your thoughts.
Would one of you like to pitch in?
Yeah, I can just add, one line thing, right? So you think, right, when you enter any house, you have a main gate, right? So front end is like that, right? You have a main gate which everybody see, and they can execute, they can try to do anything on your UI, right? And if your UI is not secure, you can think you might get some information, some data leak, and finally the data breach can happen, right? So we need to make sure that the front end is secure, and especially when you are taking some input from the user, right? That time it's really critical that you need to make sure that your input validation, that's a very, very critical part of any front end, I would say, security, right? And then obviously the best practices you guys must be following. So I'll give you a small example. You go to any website, right? You go to Lighthouse, you select the best practice, and just you run the Lighthouse, right? Remove everything and click on the desktop, not on the mobile, right? You will see, you will get the scoring of your website, that what does it score. It's like 60%, 80%, 90%, or 100%. It will give you the information as well, that where are you lacking. This is like very minimal thing, right, which you can see right now, even on the browser, right? You don't have to run any tool or anything. So this is how even browsers and even the support they are trying to give towards the web security, right? And yeah, I think there are thousands of things which I can talk, but yeah, we can move forward.
Yeah. Okay, so as he hacker mentioned that front end is a it's a door, right? So we can take an example that front end is not in only a door; it's a door to our entire backend infrastructure as well. Once we bridge the data from the front end, if the hacker get the login credential or something, maybe they can hamper your API calls, your backend data as well. So we have to think in that perspective also, because this is the door to your entire infrastructure.
Okay. Actually, let's go with the next question now. What is cross-site scripting? I think we had a brief talk right now, but you can go ahead.
Sure, sure. So, cross-site scripting or XSS is a type of attack where an attacker can inject a malicious executable script into the victim's website. And once that particular script get executed, it may let the attacker get all your access to your cookie session and all your information and other financial information if you are sharing those information to your browser. So via this, this is the first way where the attacker can like hijack your website as well and may play around with your cookies and session and get your all the information from your website.
And how do you mitigate it? Like,
Okay, so to mitigate, first we have to see how attacker can inject the script into your website. There are multiple ways the attacker can add this script. One of the easiest way is via form fields. In the website, we have different types of form fields, input field. If it's in on the entire website. So if there is a if the input fields in your website is not proper validated or sanitized, the script can directly be injected as an input to your website, which when run to the browser can do the threat. Other ways, like whenever someone is sharing you a link and on click of that link you are going to that particular victim's website, that particular execution get again it will like run the script and it will like give access to the everything to the website to the attacker. So how to mitigate that? First, you have to make sure that you have added proper input validations. Once you are getting the input, you should validate, or you can sanitize, or you can reject. That is on rule. Like what exactly you have to do. When running those particular piece of input data in your code, you should encode your outputs as well. Just that there is a secondary check. You can make sure that okay, whatever is coming, you can sanitize. You can properly validate, you can encode, you can check if there is any HTML tag or markup tags are there in the output, and then accordingly you can just change or you can eliminate those things and then just render it, the content or the numbers that whatever you want to show. These are the two things that coming in my mind. At one point, we can have a proper CSP configuration also. What is CSP? CSP is a content security policy. So whenever your server hosts that website, there are certain headers you can provide at your server itself, and it will allow a certain script from certain origin only to execute. So it helps us to control the origin of those scripts from where we want to run those scripts, because every website will have their own set of scripts also, and it's very hard to identify like which is owned by the website itself or it's coming from the attacker. So by mentioning and by specifying the origin of those kind of script, it will be easy for us to control that kind of threat.
Okay, that's great to know. Does anyone want to pitch in?
I can add like one or two more points to it, right? So XSS is one of the easiest and I would say one of the hardest attack which we usually try, right, on any site. Now, XSS doesn't have any foolproof solution, right? What you need to do is when you're taking the input from a user, and if you don't have any kind of sanitization there, user are allowed to enter anything, right? Any kind of input. Now, already Ruchika covered about the input validation and you have, CSP and a lot more. But just, keep in mind that there is no foolproof solution for XSS, right? Even if you have multiple, controls, XSS can happen. Now, the thing is, you think if XSS is possible, why as a developer or as a company, I'm worried about it, right? So XSS is not only about getting your cookies and, trying, there are like lots of things we can do if XSS is possible on your website, right? I can log in as you as a user and I can modify your websites, right? There could be some data breach can happen based on what kind of XSS is possible. Is it a stored XSS? Is it DOM XSS, or it is reflected? So there are like 3 types of XSS attack we usually try. Normal there are like more, but 3 is mostly focused one, right? Which you will heard, right? So XSS is attack which I think if you see in the security field, everybody knows, right? And everybody try to do something around it. So we should, implement multiple controls to get out of this and try to prevent, excesses. Yeah.
Divyanshu, do you have anything to add?
I think mainly input validation is like the most common measure. And like some of the frameworks, for example, React automatically does a lot to prevent these. Besides like handling on front end, one more thing that should be done is like handling it on your backend servers or your backend for front end layer if you have any. For example, let's say if you have a block markup field where you're just storing some markup from the user being stored in the database, then those sanitization should happen at each and every layer, because someone can figure out your API endpoint. They can simulate that API endpoint via Postman or any other curl request, and that data can go. And once the user retrieves that data, that again the script can execute. Similarly, like if you're sharing a URL, for example, and you have a query param where you're, let's say, taking a form field through query param, that is again a vector for XSS. So even query params should get DOM purified or sanitized. I think that's mostly what I have.
Okay, thank you for that. I think we'll go to the next question now. So we are used to using third-party libraries. What do you have to look for when choosing one from a security perspective?
Right. So today, when you go to any website, right, and if you see the whole website, you will find there are like 60 to 70% of the website are open source thing, right? You use Java, right? You use JavaScript. Everything is open source. You use multiple libraries to get something which which you are not getting out of the box, or let's say which you want to achieve, right? Now, if you're using any library, right? Have you ever checked that what all dependencies does that library has, right? And the library, let's say you're using EJS, right? I think most of you might be knowing, right? So have you checked ever that EJS has any vulnerabilities, which version you are using? I think the answer will be no, most of you, right? But go and check. You will find that out of, let's say you are using 20 libraries, out of 20, 18 have some vulnerability, right? And not only those libraries, even the dependency of dependency. So no, nowadays you might heard a word called supply chain attack, right? This came in picture because of this open source thing which everybody use today in their website, right? You can take even Google or any site, right, in the world. Everybody is using thousands of libraries. So what you need to see is whenever you are picking any library, make sure to check that what version of library you're using, whether that particular version is or has any vulnerability, right? Let's say maybe last month they have updated something and you are using 2 years old libraries which has some vulnerability, but now they don't have. The problem is you see that you are using 2 years old library and you think that your site is safe, right? You don't even see, you don't even check that the libraries which you are using, your site is safe. You're saying that we have CSRF token, you have XSS, we mitigated, we have put CSP in place, a lot more thing. But your library is, is vulnerable, right? So somebody can take that benefit, and finding a library is not a big thing. That what library you are using, it's not a very big thing to find, right? So next time, whenever you're using any new libraries in your code, try to see that what version you are using and the dependency of that, that particular library, whether it has any vulnerability or not. You can find there must be some library available which doesn't have any vulnerability, right? So you should use those libraries which doesn't have any vulnerability at least, right? And then the dependency of those libraries. So you should look for at least these things which will help you to write a secure code, which we say, and it will obviously make your website secure. Yeah.
Yeah, Anantu, do you want to add on to it?
A lot of the points that you mentioned, I think, is kind of exaggerated in the JavaScript world because we basically use npm for literally everything. So we have a we might have a package to add two numbers maybe, and then that package will have 1 million downloads a month. And then if this library is hijacked somehow and then it injects malicious code into your application, and suddenly overnight your like millions of websites all over the world has a vulnerability or some code that it's not supposed to execute. But like, I'm curious, do you suggest pinning a specific version of a library, or do you like recommend people to put the caret or this thing for the auto upgrade?
Correct. So you can at least maintain the libraries which you are using, the version of it. So let's say if you see some vulnerability came in the market and people are really exploiting those vulnerabilities, at least you can go ahead and then upgrade those libraries, right? Maybe you are not able to upgrade all of them. At least you can upgrade the one which has recent vulnerability and which is getting exploited, right? Uh, so that will be really helpful.
Okay, thank you for that. Devanshu, you want to add on?
Yeah, I mean, coming to the node modules ecosystem, which is like super vast. I think one of the tools which we use is Dependabot, but Dependabot isn't very dependable. It's like you fix one issue, 10 more issues come up. But I think it does give you an insight of at least the high severity issues that you can look for in your modules and try to prioritize them. And at least 95% of the time, those won't be any security issues for your application, but just a good practice. And I think like another good point can be to always pin your dependencies. Although like it sounds counterintuitive, that is one practice we recommend, and we also have a linting tool to enforce that. uh, we always pin our dependencies. for some of us, we might remember the left pad incident where like a node module entirely was deleted. So it is possible that a dependency of a dependency of a transitive dependency got patched with malicious code, and soon your code will also inherit that if you're not pinning your dependencies. So generally, that is one good practice I can encourage.
Okay, thanks for that, Ruchika. Okay, I think we'll go to the next question now. What is distributed denial of service and how do they affect applications? Divyanshu, I think that's your field.
Okay, yeah. So I mean, coming to distributed denial of service, first we have to understand what is denial of service, and I mean, to break it down into further simpler words, let's say you have a web server that is simply serving index HTML, which is hello world. Let's say you host this server somewhere. It can be AWS EC2. It can be a simple uh, any web hosting service that is there. Turn through that, uh, and now you request that endpoint. You get the HTML response back, but let's say there are now hundreds of people requesting the same page. So maybe not a problem for your server, but let's bump it up to 1,000, and let's bump it up further to 10,000, and soon you can realize, like, if you have a simple $5 server which is like running a very low powered processor, very less memory, it can put a huge load on your server. And denial of service by itself is easier to mitigate than distributed denial of service, because you can put different IP based rules in your load balancer or in your CDN, that says like, hey, if an IP sends, let's say, more than 1,000 requests per minute, you just block that IP for a few minutes. But that solves denial of service. But now attackers are more sophisticated. They will run various different machines all across the world, which will obviously have different IPs, and now they will hit your server from all those different machines. And now for your server, it is really hard to figure out which is a legitimate user, which is not, and that's where problems begin to happen. And soon we have DDoS at our hands.
And what preventions would you suggest?
Yeah, I mean, I think DDoS by itself, you need a multi-layer defense. That is at least what we have at our infrastructure. So at the first layer, like, there are different types of applications. So for most applications, DDoS might not even be a problem. For example, if you have a client's rendered application, which is what most front-end applications are, uh, where you have a CDN. A CDN is just serving some static markups from, let's say, S3 or from your storage. Uh, it can scale whole lot, but actually, this has a downside that, for example, let's say if you're using S3 with CloudFront, even S3 has a rate limit, so it is possible for an attacker to extinguish that rate limit so that even legitimate users are not able to receive a response. So this problem can still happen for CSR apps, but it is fairly less common. But where this problem happens a lot more is server-side rendered applications, where you want to send dynamic responses to different users. For example, let's say you have a dashboard, let's say like GitHub.com, where you're sending a customized response to all the users. And some of the measures can be like put a CDN in front. That is like first thing. Cache responses. There's various then advanced measures like WAF rules, and then using your cloud service provider to have use some advanced services like Shield, which AWS provides. But yeah, I think we can go further in depth on that.
Oh yeah, sure. Would someone else like to add on, Ruchika?
Yeah, so DDoS has like multiple layer where exactly it hit the system. So we know that we have a OSI model where we have a transport network protocol application layer. So different type of DDoS can attack different layers, and each layer have their own prevention and measure. But at last, like, you have to rely totally on the server, how you have like architect your server, and how you, when you will be getting so much of request, how you will be handling the auto scale and the different stuff of servers. So, for one of the measure, as he mentioned, that we can rely on the cloud services. For example, Cloudflare have one of any net service that they provide, where according like that particular service of Cloudflare is acknowledged for identifying DDoS type of scenario and taking measure according to that. They have certain configuration, and accordingly they can create a black hole within that. If a certain request coming from certain sets of API in a like large volume, large amount, they can just put those type of server into a black hole scenario. But in that scenario, there is a issue that sometimes the legitimate users also fall up trap, and they also go and they will be seeing a empty website. So yeah, there is no direct prevention how we can mitigate that, but yeah, we can have a set of rules to like minimize it.
Yeah, I think we have already covered most of it, right? So one of the things which you can add is the captcha, right, on your website. That's very small, but it's really helpful when you get a DOS or DDoS. And in DOS and DDoS, you have to be proactive than reactive, right? Because when you have a DOS or DDoS attack, you can't do anything, right? Your website will be look like a static website, right? It's just HTML, nothing else, right? You cannot do anything. Your site will be down for that much time when you have DOS or DDoS attack. So only the thing is you need to put controls, right? You need to add WAF, you need to add CDN, which Dimanshu already covered, right? So we have to add 5, 6 different type of controls, which will help you to protect yourself. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Ananto.
One thing I want to talk about when it comes to DDoS attacks is like how we as engineers kind of optimize ourselves to outsmart the attackers. So we kind of think about attackers and how like we try to outsmart them, but then we kind of forget that users are sometimes really dumb, and they kind of shoot themselves in the foot a lot. So placing stringent mechanisms will sometimes lead to actual users just hitting those limits and then not being able to use your service. Like a lot of websites, like especially in their OTP endpoints, if something goes wrong, they kind of block that user for like 24 hours, and now this user can't use a service for 24 hours unless they reach out to support. um, we kind of faced a similar issue at small case too, where we had an attack, like a distributed attack on our OTP endpoints, and then we did place a few stringent like rate limits, a lot of other things on that endpoint. But then we were also seeing that users were kind of triggering these things by themselves. So we'll have to it's always a delicate balance between UX and like security and engineering. So it's a
One point which I would like to add, that you should have a DR, right? Which we say basically a next server, right? Let's say your main server is choked because of some reason, then you can overload all the traffic to a different site altogether, so that if one place you have DOS is happening, maybe your hacker is not knowing about the different site, right? Which is your DR, and you can route all the traffic to DR, and the attack is going on your your main site, but still your application is working as usual. So DR is really important when it comes to DDoS attack. Yeah.
Oh, thank you for that. I think that was very insightful. What best practices would you suggest for web security? Do you follow? I mean, you must be following in your organization. So could you talk something about that?
Like in small case, we have a security team. Like we kind of run a lot of practices through them. If you're adding third-party libraries in our dependencies, we run this also through them, and they also have periodic security audits. And if something's not right, then they ping us immediately, and then they'll be like, "Gotta fix this right now." Um, yeah, I mean, that's the security team's concern. But as developers, uh, like we kind of are spoiled by the default settings that React gives us. So we don't look at these things on a day-to-day basis. Mostly it'll be through audits or if any incident happen, and then we look at it.
I think mainly we covered most points. Some things that we follow at our org is like we have a dedicated security team because it's like a very specialized domain. And any new service or any new feature we onboard, it goes through a rigorous security approval. So it's like a tech spec. Even in the tech spec process, there is a proper security check that's happening. But coming more to the ground level of things, so for example, one thing I talked about for DDoS. So for example, for any new service, we have a infrastructure checklist that the service onboarding should go through. So all these common security measures, those are handled in that checklist. And another thing I think good to have is a static analysis tool. For example, we use a tool called SemGraph. It's like ESLint, but it runs for all your repos and it will surface common issues. For example, let's say you might have hard coded a password somewhere, let's say. So it will flag those things. And those rules are configured by our security team. So they can take a end user eye on all those things. They can control all the rules they want to have. And then it's up to the application team to kind of mitigate all those. So I think it's like a very cross collaborating effort that should be done for proper web security. It's not something that should be isolated within front end or within security domain. And that's one approach we like to take.
For me, code review on a regular basis is very important. Make sure that if you are having any third party libraries, make sure that you know what is going under the hood. Like if they are giving some input thing or they are handling your session or cookies, make sure that you know what is going under the hood. And you should take extra care when you are dealing with sessions and cookies, because that will lead to the authorization and authentication issues as well. Other than we can use tools like static analysis or vulnerabilities scanner on a regular basis at like while development only. We don't have to wait, okay, once the project is done then we are going with the security audit. At the initial phase, if you set up that, it will help us to like give more clarity, and from day one it will be in our practice only, like how to deal with these type of scenarios.
Yeah, I think there are few things which we can try. Like you don't have to invest for that, right? There is something called SAST, which Divanshu covered, right? So SAST is basically what it does is it's check your code, whatever code you are writing, and it try to find if there is any vulnerability which can be done out of this code, right? They doesn't run it; they just see from the top and give you the result. But at the same time, you might get lots of false positive, so that's another problem, right? Then you might check for so few tools. If I can tell you for SAST, you can use SemGrip. That's a really good tool. You can use SonarQube. They have good support for developer edition, then community edition as well. It's a really good tool. One of the best tool in the market, you can say, suggested by OASP. Then you can use Snyk as well. That's a paid, but they have open source as well, right? You can use another tool called for Dashed. That is basically what it does is Dashed is a tool which run your complete application in a sandbox environment, and then it gives you the result, right? So it's really good to have SAST then Dashed, and try to find if you find any third party library which has some vulnerability. And nowadays if you are really looking for good security, then you should implement security in your SDLC process, right? Not after deploying to production and then you say some third party to find any vulnerabilities, right? Before that, you should implement the security as a check. You might not have right now. You just write code and deploy it to your production. You don't even see that what vulnerability it has. But you should add a checklist for the security to make sure that whatever whatever, let's say, new feature is coming in place, or whatever your application is handling, everything is going through a secure channel. Let's say input validation is happening, or third party libraries you are using, there is no vulnerability in that. So all those checks So you can add a secure SDLC process. You can implement that in your organization, which will really helpful, and it will help you to secure your application for sure. Yeah.
Okay, I think that concludes our panel discussion. Thank you so much. It was very insightful, and especially hearing about your experiences. We'll take some questions now. Do you have any?
So just to be clear, I'm not a web dev. So most of my questions are as a user, but still. This one is more philosophical. So nowadays, browser are including lower level APIs, for example, web USB. So the idea behind this is you can do everything in the browser. So do you think that access to the internet or to the web through applications should be more abstracted, as in sandboxed, or should it become more low level? You think it can be done securely? Okay, so nowadays there are lower level APIs to access, like let's say you want to flash a phone using your browser. So you can do that through web USB issuing ADB commands. So this is obviously the benefits are it's easier for the users to run something through the website, but the downside is you're allowing like low level access to the USB drivers, right? Basically. So do you think there is a way to do this securely in the future? Or do you think everything should be sandboxed more?
No, I don't think so. Everything can be sandboxed, right, at the same place, because that will be not user friendly, right? So what you can try to see is whenever you are accessing any website, right, there is a like we use a lot of tools to see whether that site has some vulnerability or not, or whether but that's not always possible to go and check the site first. But if you see some unusual behavior is happening out of the site, let's say you are from India, right? We are from India, right? So but when you go to some site, you see some some different languages, maybe Japanese or Chinese, which you can't even understand what it is. And when you go to that site, you see that some pop-up is coming that maybe your system has a virus, right? Even though you know that you're using Mac, you're secure, right? But you are not that much. So whenever you see such pop-up coming, you should make sure that those websites you should check, right? And sometimes what happens is, even though you clean your cookies, you clear your history, even though you get those kind of pop-ups on your website, so that time you should check with your security team that why I'm getting this pop-up. I visited some site maybe last week and still I'm getting that. So that time you can see that, okay, there is something happening in my system once I visited that website, right? So you can think of some good practices whenever you are visiting any website. So sandboxing actually is not a solution. However, I would say the education, security, understanding how critical it can be is really a solution, right? Yeah.
Okay, another question I had was we talked a lot about NPM and like dependency security. So if you're a company, okay, yeah. So if you're a company, you'll obviously have a security team to manage all of that. But if you're an open source developer, how are you supposed to go through all of these dependencies before adding them? So like, is there any easier way than to
Right.
do
So
it everything?
there are like lots of easier way nowadays, because we need to see that how developer can write a code in a secure way, instead of going to through a security team and getting the approvals and trying to what we usually suggest the developer, even we have done in our environment as well, we ask them to integrate some kind of tools like SemGrep is a really good tool, which will give you a real time vulnerability thing, right? So let's say if you are using some vulnerable API, or let's say if you are using some vulnerable even libraries, it will give you the notification immediately that, hey, this particular this particular library has this vulnerability, right? So you can integrate with any such tool like Sonar, or SemGrip is really good. Snake is another best in the market. So you can integrate any of those tools, which will give you the notification in the real time, right? As soon as you write the code, you get the result.
Got it.
Yeah,
Okay,
that will
one
be
last
really
question.
helpful.
So there's a new concept. I think it's not implemented everywhere, but the concept is cross-origin resource sharing. So the idea is that your website will load from the server, and then directly from the client device, it will query, let's say, files from the driver, whatever. So I think this is a potential solution for DDoS. What do you think?
That's one of the solution I would say. But as even Divanshu told, right, that there is no there is not one solution for DDoS, right? The problem is people try different layers. If you see in the OSI model, right, from application to you have physical layer. So attackers try in all this different way, and in application layer you'll see your memory choking, whereas in the physical layer you see something else happening, right? So they try to choke your servers, your website in any way, right? We have seen a DDoS attack of multi GBs per second, right? It's like 30-40 GBs per second attack is happening, which which your server won't be able to handle at any cost, right? So what we use to we suggest to implement some CDN, right, which Divansh already covered. That CDN is really good solution, and you should have a DR, right? That I suggested that you should have a DR if you think that you are such a big organization and you might get a DDoS attack, right? So you should cover that. Yeah.
Thank you.
I'd like to talk about that first question you had about the sandbox thing. I think, I mean, in an idealistic world, a sandbox system would be like great because, of course, it can't access any of your resources, and a web browser should just render HTML and do nothing else. But then I think as we come into the real world, like web browsers are one piece of software that all users will have, and then we can kind of trust the companies that build these browsers to be on top of their security this thing. So an alternate of not letting browsers access USB is like to download a command line tool or something, and that kind of exposes users to a wider range of attacks. So I'd say idealistically, of course, we can have a sandbox, but then a web browser having these features might kind of ensure that they're built in a more responsible and a more secure way.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, I guess we are done with questions now. Thank you so much. I hope this was a valuable session to you as well.
Thank you all for a very informative panel discussion. Next up, before we wrap up, we have Naman with a quick 1 minute talk on his new open source project and to let you know all about it. Over to you.
Thank you, Vaishnavi. Just a minute. Okay. Till things set up, it's not a talk or anything. It's just a 1 minute open source plug. Nothing related to today's theme, but as Pushkar did mention in his talk, it's difficult to get open source noticed. And since all of you are open source enthusiasts, wanted to just plug our project. Yeah. Right. So a couple of months back, my friends and I started working on an observability open source platform, which is called as Infino, Infino. So observability is being solved by a number of platforms, etc. But the open source one, right? There's Prometheus and ELK, if most of you would be knowing. So the thing is, these are two separate platforms, one for matrix storing and one for application log storing. Why not a common open source platform to have both of them together? So with that mindset, we tried creating a platform called as Infino. It's written completely in Rust, and giving that capability which Rust has, the initial benchmarks show that we are a lot more faster than other applications out there. Okay, this is, we are not working on this full time. This is completely open source. So I mean, no affiliations or anything. The purpose to bring this up over here is, since all of you are open source enthusiasts, if you can, check it out. If you feel that you would want to contribute, please feel free to contribute. We would, want people to have their first contributions onto this, and maybe even you could use it in your companies later. It's of course free of cost because it's open source. So yeah, thank you so much to the organizers for giving me this minute. It's INFINO. Maybe the least if you could do is give a star. Sorry for the plug. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Vaishnavi and team.
Okay, with that, we have come to the end of our July meetup. So great job to all the speakers for such a wonderful session on many different topics that were covered. Once again, a huge shout out to Geekians for giving us a space to host the session. And yes, most importantly, the audience, you guys who have made it all the way here for a very successful meetup. So guys, we'll just do one group picture, and after that you can finally disperse for the snacks. And thank you all so much for coming and